Greetings! In this video I'll be painting an Infernus Marine from the Salamanders Second Company. This is a fairly simple model, using an Assault Intercessor body and some spare arms from other kits. The Absolution pattern Flamer comes from an old Firstborn kit, which will help keep the focus of the scheme later. Before moving on to that, I'll just say this guy was primed up using my usual black primer through my airbrush. As usual, if you're following along, you can use any black primer that works for you. Now onto the inspiration for this build. I was originally considering doing the typical style seen on the Primaris Salamanders, as the standard infantry transfer sheet has all the markings needed. But having seen the Imperial Armour examples, I decided to go in that direction instead. I figure this guy is one of the first across the Rubicon, and still paints his armour in the old ways, and uses the older gear. The older style is a lot less vibrant, and features Codex tactical markings, which I'll be doing today. To start with, I used Vulcan Green to build up the base armour colour. This was applied in a few thin coats over the entire model, which includes the Flamer, matching the Imperial Armour references. Next, I mixed in some Warboss Green into the Vulcan Green, and applied some thin layers over the armour in spots that are most exposed to light. I mixed these two together as the other greens in the Citadel range didn't really fit the colour that I'm looking for. With the armour done for now, I moved over to Abaddon Black to clean up the undersuit and the pauldrons. Now for the leather. I used Rhinox hide like I usually do here for the base, followed by a thin and scratchy highlight with Skrag brown. I didn't give this guy any pouches, so it's fairly plain around his belt. Finally, Deathclaw brown was applied, lighter than the Skrag brown in an attempt to emphasise certain scratches. With the undersuit and leather out of the way, I moved back to the armour and used Warboss Green to highlight a number of the edges. Only those near the previously layered mixture were hit with this pass. I then switched to Corvus Black to block in the pauldrons. The references show that it's not a fully dark black, especially when compared to other chapters in the books, so this colour works nicely. In preparation for decals, I applied a thin coat of gloss varnish to the pauldrons, and a tiny bit on his right greave. Whilst waiting for the varnish to cure, I started to work on the metallics, starting with Retributor armour for the gold details. This included the skull on his hand, the little Aquila on the Flamer, and the Imperialis on his torso. Next, I switched to Iron Warriors, and painted in the remaining metallic details, such as the details on his power pack, Flamer, and around the armour. After the metallics were done, I applied the decals off camera using Microset and Microsol. These mark him out as a member of the 8th Squad of the Second Company. Now onto the eye lenses and the various bits on the wrists. Starting with Mephiston red, I blocked them all in, careful to not go over onto the green. Next, I applied some Evil Sunz Scarlet as a highlight, focusing towards one corner of each surface. For the screen on his wrist, I attempted a radar-like graphic. Wild Rider Red was next, doing a smaller area than the previous colour. Lugganath Orange was last, with only a small bit being applied in the corners to act as the source of the glow. I really like this set of 4 colours for red light sources or lenses. It stands out nicely against armour of pretty much every colour, and isn't too hard for me to do. Now onto some freehanding, a flame detail on the leg. There's a few references for this, but I kinda just winged it. I went with some muted colours, starting with Ratskin flesh as the strong base coat. Then I used Squig orange to do the tips of the flames. This is only the second time I've ever painted flames. The first one was only in black for a retro-inspired 5th Company Marine. For the bottom of the flame, I used Bestigor flesh, doing a stippling method to get a nice pattern, somewhat mimicking embers. Finally, I used Ungor flesh for the bottommost dots, though this was mostly in the corners, so it's barely noticeable. Back onto the metallics for now. Runefang steel was used to highlight the upwards facing silver surfaces, as well as dotting the rivets and little buttons on the wrist device. The Flamer Heat Haze was next, starting with Druteshire Violet. Whilst it was still wet, I brought Seraphim Sepia in to blend the two together. Whilst I still had the sepia wash out, I applied it over the gold details as well. Next, I switched to an old dry brush and dry brushed on some Abaddon black to work as a scorching effect for the muzzle of the flamer. Now we're finally onto the enamel wash. This time around I'm using the black Paneliner from AK. I wanted to keep the green in the current temperature, so I decided to use the black Paneliner instead of the brown one this time around. I focused this towards the panel lines, trying to keep most surfaces clean. It's a fairly clean paint job, and after all, he's just been given this new armour. I used a cotton tip to clean off any enamel where it went a bit haywire, especially when it went over the gold. The gold with the Seraphim Sepia shade was perfect in my eyes, so cleaning off any black was important to keep that finish. There was a few times when the enamel applicator bumped into a piece that I wasn't intending, though the cotton tips helped to clean up those spills. After an hour or two, I based the model, painting the base rim black, and then tied everything in with an ultramatte varnish. And here we have it! An Infernus Marine of the Salamanders 2nd Company. I'm genuinely impressed with this one. I really like the green, even though it could be a little bit more olive. The decals and the flame came out really nicely, and overall I think this scheme is a lot nicer than the current interpretation of the Salamanders, which look a lot more like striking scorpions now with their neon green scheme. I'd definitely give it a go in the future if people want me to, but who knows, maybe it looks a lot better in person. The older style flamer came out nicely too. I'm never quite sure about painting weapon casings the same colour as the armour, but I think this looks nice. It might be reminding me of some Imperial Guard paint jobs a bit. Either way, I really like the style that the Imperial armour books deliver. They're much more grounded and more brutal than the codexes, or the official paint jobs. It's something I feel is a bit lacking in modern 40k, where we're going back to the clean and colourful look from 2nd edition, but I do prefer the darker and more grounded versions. To each their own of course, and I do look forward to trying out some brighter schemes, like I did with the Aurora chapter a few videos ago. But anyway, that's all I've got for this video, and I hope you stick around for the next one.